All right, so the NBA offseason was supposed to be a little bit tame this year, but with the shortened offseason, it has been a bit crazy. I am pleased to be joined now by Eric Smith, Raptors radio play-by-play, sideline reporter, and host of Sportsnet 590's Smith and Jones with Paul Jones. Eric, thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
First and most importantly, how is you and your family doing during these times? You guys staying safe and healthy?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. Everybody's good. Unfortunately, every day and week that goes by, it seems like I find out about somebody else that unfortunately has gotten sick. But knock on wood, as bad as the numbers are here in Ontario and even in Canada, obviously not as bad as other places. So we keep doing our part in this household and trying to stay as safe and as responsible as possible. So obviously, everybody watching this, hopefully you're doing the same, and we can get on the other side of this sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the numbers rising here in British Columbia too, it's time to just do what you need to do, wear a mask, wash your hands, and all that stuff. So, NBA free agency. I mean, wow. Did you see it coming like this? Because I sure didn't.
Yes and no. I mean, listen, I don't know that I expected the amount of movement that there was, but at the same time, I did expect it to be kind of frenzied, given the fact that the bizarro world that we're living in, and doing free agency, much differently this year, and not just the timing in terms of the calendar, but just the way that it was set up with, the bonanza beginning at 6 p.m. instead of midnight, and deals official 2 days later instead of 5 or 7 days later, and everything kind of jammed into a very short window, trying to get rosters set before training camps open now in just a couple of days. So I did anticipate, because of all that, just because of the timing, that it would be a little bit crazy, but I'm not sure that I anticipated or expected the amount of movement that there was. That said, I know it maybe doesn't seem that way for the Raptors, considering two of their guys moved on, but for the most part, I think there were a lot of guys kind of re-signing or staying put, and that certainly applies to Fred VanVleet as well, which was Toronto's number one priority. So, it's just kind of, I guess it's par for the course every offseason, Josh, in terms of the craziness of the NBA. We often say in these circles that there's never a dull moment in the NBA, even in season, off season, whenever it is. There's always something happening in the league, and certainly this free agent period and the trades and whatnot have not let us down.
Well, let's move right into the Toronto Raptors then. So obviously, Fred VanVleet signing the 4-year, $85 million deal. He had his media call on Tuesday, and he seemed very calculated. His brand was on point. I mean, you spoke with him as one of the ugly media members. I mean, what did you get the feel from that Zoom call with him?
I listen. I think he's back where he wanted to be, and I guess the bonus of it all is he's back where he wants to be, and he gets paid. And that's certainly a very good thing when you're an undrafted player, and just a few short years later, you're $85 million richer. It's an incredible story. And, if you had asked me a week ago what my gut was, I would have said my gut is he's coming back. I truly did believe that he was coming back. I didn't have any insider knowledge of that. Nobody had officially told me that. It was just kind of my gut that I thought that he was going to be back and retained, and I thought the Raptors would do everything they could. Because, they obviously, and this, and anybody that's a Raptor fan watching knows that they had to protect the present, but they had to protect the future too. I think Kyle Lowry has earned the right to basically dictate what he wants to do. If he wants to move on, okay, we'll try and facilitate a trade at the end, mid-season, or we'll allow you to move on next year in free agency, or we'll orchestrate a sign and trade. Whatever you want. You want to be back? You're back. We'll sign you to a contract. You want to be part of this team? No problem. You can stick around. I think that his legacy with this team has earned him that right to basically set his own terms and to dictate his future as he's in sort of the final stages, perhaps. And again, who knows how long that final stage is, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. He's on the back nine, not the front nine. But the point I bring up, obviously, in Lowry is you needed to protect your future if you're the Raptors, and not allow the cupboard to be bare at the end of this coming season, in the what-if possibility of you didn't re-sign VanVleet. You already dealt DeLon Wright almost 2 seasons ago now, and then you potentially lose for Kyle Lowry in free agency. Outside of Malachi Flynn, who you just drafted, who do you got? So I think this was something where we're re-signing the Raptor, or excuse me, we're the Raptors, and we're re-signing Fred VanVleet because he's a hell of a player, and I think potential all-star ability, but certainly floor general, floor leader, quarterback of your team. that is a starter in your backcourt alongside Lowry right now, and obviously could very well be the incumbent, takeover leader. This could be, his team in another season or two, depending on what shakes down with Lowry. So it was a no-brainer for the Raptors, and certainly for Fred with the money available, a no-brainer for him as well. Listen, I've gotten to know him a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and say we're like, bosom buddies and we wine and dine on the road, because that's definitely not the case. But what I think I have known of him since he came into the league, he's the type of player that you want on your team because of those leadership qualities that I speak of. But I think he also carries himself with that confidence, but also with an amount of confidence, but also respect for fellow teammates, respect for coaches, respect for officials, respect for fans, respect for media. He's just a good person. And I don't want to get too cheesy and fluffy about it, but I really do think that he's the type of person that when we talk about trying to, a young kid looking up to a player, whether it be as a role model or simply just as a favorite, he's the type of guy that as a parent you would want your kid to like because of his what he stands for, I think, and the way he carries himself, again, off the floor, let alone on the floor. And I know I've told my kid even, like, I kind of tap into the Marcus Stroman line of height doesn't measure heart. I'm only 5'9" myself. I'm not a big dude, but people that are out there, don't let your height or your size or your weight or your looks or whatever dictate whatever you're doing in any walk of life. If you want it, go for it. Have that work ethic, have that confidence, have that mindset, have that approach. And just believe in yourself. And again, a lot of that sounds cheesy now because people are throwing out slogans and phrases all the time, like Fred himself with "bet on yourself." But truly, yeah, bet on yourself and have that confidence, and don't allow anything that may be to some considered a potential detractor in what you're doing or a potential roadblock in your way. No, bust through that and just continue to have confidence in yourself if nobody else is going to have it. And I think Fred's just a beautiful, beautiful example of that, and the type of person that you want on your team to set the example not only for fellow players but for fans that are rallying behind you as well.
I'm glad that you touched on just his off-season stuff, or his off-court stuff, more than his on-court stuff, because that's so important to build a franchise around. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's undrafted. Watching some of the videos back now, just him just telling his family, like, hey, no, you know what? I had some opportunities, but I'm doing it. I'm betting on myself. And and the slogans, as cheesy as they are, it's important, and it kind of it sends a good message as a franchise and for fans in the future of what the Toronto Raptors want to be about.
Well, think about, you're bang on what the Raptors are wanting to be about as organization, but also what they've battled through themselves and what they're still currently battling through. I mean, I can tell you, I know I'm quite a bit older than you, but I can go back to the original years in 95, 96 when the team came into the league, let alone when they were announced as an expansion franchise. This team's not going to stick around. This is a fringe sport. This is a fringe team. They won't last. Nobody cares about basketball. There's not an appetite for this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here we are 25 plus years later now, and with an NBA championship. And then look at what they're going through right now. And obviously for very good reasons and for very important reasons, because of the way that our country, and again, I reference for the second time, we're not in a great situation here, but we're in a better situation than they are stateside and in many places in the world. And because of the restrictions that we have, the Raptors are forced to go down to Tampa for at least part of the season, for at least the start of the season, and maybe it ends up being for the entire season. So what does all that say going back to 95, 96? Going back to just a couple of weeks ago when the announcement about Tampa was made. This organization betting on themselves, having that drive to bust through, to keep fighting, to not worry about, all the little roadblocks and those little hurdles that come along the way. Just continue staying on the path, believing in what you do, believing this team is going to succeed even through those rough years, believing that you're going to recover from, the absence of Vince Carter and the recovery from the Bosch years. And suddenly now, boom. Look at that again right now then with the current situation, believing that you're going to be able to succeed down in Tampa and you're going to make a go of this, and you're tapping into that experience that you gained perhaps down in the bubble and pre-bubble when you were the first team to go down because of the quarantining rules and et cetera, having to go down to Naples for a couple of weeks even before the bubble. All of the things that the Raptors have been through, this to me is, again, saying for the third or fourth time here, believing in yourself, betting on yourself, and just continuing to keep that mindset. And I think it's something that trickles throughout the organization.
How important do you think it was for the organization to kind of consult the players with what they wanted to do in regards to the season and going down to Tampa? And because if I'm correct, I think that the players were asked and their input was kind of highly regarded.
Yeah, listen. I think that there's no denying that this is an organization that certainly taps into the players' opinions and wants to. And I think in today's day and age, you need to. It needs to be a bit of a collaborative effort. But at the same time, and I'm not implying that you're saying this, I think we'd all be naive to think, though, that if the players were to say, well, it should be here. Okay, well, that's where we're going. I mean, we're talking about major decisions that are going on, not only within the organization, but obviously as it relates to the league as well and what the league needs and wants. And then obviously we factor in arena availability and whatnot. I mean, I don't know that it would have been as simple as to say, okay, we don't want to go to Buffalo. Okay, well, sure, we'll go to Tampa then. I mean, there's a lot of factors to check off, not the least of which is where you want to live and where you'd prefer to live if it can't be Toronto. And I'd rather be warm than cold, so I'd rather be in Tampa than Buffalo. I mean, you're talking about practice facilities and living arrangements. I still don't even know, right as we speak, Josh, if the players will be setting up shop in a hotel for the entire, whether it be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, or if there's going to be Airbnbs, renting homes. I have no idea right now. That was something even I was wondering myself, in the very, very, very remote chance that I'd be heading to Tampa, and that's not going to be happening, and we'll be broadcasting remotely from Canada, and that's not only in part because of COVID concerns and safety, but obviously limiting travel parties and then cost. Let's be honest, to send all the broadcasters down and to take everybody, players, coaches, everybody away from families and say, okay, you now live in Tampa for the next 3 months, 7 months, whatever. And oh yeah, by the way, you're not just staying in Tampa, you're still traveling the entire year and hopping on planes and going in and out of hotels. It's going to be a massive, massive expense for the Raptors to do it for whomever they ultimately decide to take. The travel party is normally, man, I honestly don't even know the number off the top of my head. If I'm trying to do the quick math in my head here, when you factor in players, coaches, broadcasters, trainers, support staff, some from the front office, public relations, media relations, I'm going to guess that the travel party is upwards around 55-ish, I want to say, roughly, for every season, for every road trip. Somewhere in that neighborhood, probably 50 to 60, let's just say, in that neighborhood. And I believe down in the bubble, they had 35 people. So they trimmed it quite a bit. They had to. They were only allowed 35 in. Now, will they be allowed to have more, in Tampa? Technically, I would assume they could, but then you have to then say, well, hold on, how much is it going to cost us to basically pick up our entire organization and to move shop down to Tampa for an indeterminate amount of time? Again, as I say, this might only be 3 months. It might only be the first half of the season. The league still hasn't released the 36 games that they said they were going to, but the idea was they're going to put 36 out, and then as the season goes on, Josh, figure out how many teams lost games to COVID, how many teams missed 1 game, 5 games, 7 games, no games. So how many then do we need to tack on to the second half, to the other 36? And I think that's why they're doing it in stages. Well, once we finish that 36-game stretch, and that brings us into, say, late February, early March, well, is the situation any better in Ontario, in Canada? Would the Canadian government allow the Raptors to move back at that point? So it's still just such a confusing time for the team to know. First of all, again, players being taken from family and children and spouses and loved ones and everybody else. And are you taking them out of school and moving them to Tampa as well? Or are you literally moving away from your family for, who knows, walk out the door. All right, I'll see you in February, maybe, for a week off, like first week of March when the league takes a break. I guess I'll see you then. And it could be even later. Like it might be May if we end up staying down in Tampa for the entire season. Or are you yanking everybody out and saying, all right, we're going down to Tampa and you're moving with me, but we might only be here for 3 months, or it could be 6 months. So anybody that's got kids, what do you do with that? You taking them out of, like Kyle Lowry, is he taking his kids out of school in Philly and bringing them to Tampa? And then when the Raptors are allowed to go back to Toronto, is he bringing them to Toronto to go to school? Or is he sending them back to Philly? Are they going to finish up the school year in Tampa? I mean, it's a crazy, crazy time. And I think that's where, from the organization standpoint, I know this is a very long answer, I apologize. I think from the organization standpoint, you look at how much money then it's going to cost to transport your team down. that's where tough decisions will have to be made, much like the bubble where, all right, we can't bring 60, we're bringing 45. We can't bring in 45, we're bringing 35. And that's where, to go back to where we all started with this, as much as you get the players' input, at the end of the day, I think that's such a minor part of the overall decision because there are so many factors that go into obviously temporarily relocating an entire franchise. And let's be honest, the number one factor, aside from safety and facilities and the quality of the facilities, et cetera, I'm sure it's got to be money, because money as it dictates to a lot of things, even the travel. Maybe your travel's a little bit less now because you're that much closer to Orlando and Miami, and for that matter, arguably Charlotte and Atlanta, a lot of those cities that are kind of down south in a sense. So that's maybe why that pocket down there makes sense, and it will cost you less travel-wise there. So I think a lot of it will be just dictated by the money that the Raptors are going to be forced to spend, more so than any other organization right now, at a time where most organizations are making little to no money.
So on this show, I do like to bring up the money things and point out that these sports organizations are businesses, and remind fans about that and stuff, because they are, and they need to make their money, and they need to do things logistically and cost effective. I think that MLSE is going to have a nice blueprint of what they did with kind of Toronto FC, and just with regulations in kind of having, if they want the team to be able to come back and visit family and things during the season. So that's at least nice that they have a blueprint. And watching the other sports like the NFL and kind of Major League Baseball go through their seasons in the States with travel and things. So
the one question I have, and I don't know that it's a concern yet, but it's a question, and I don't know that you or I have the answer, and I don't think the league has the answer yet, because how could they? I'm not sure how the NBA is going to navigate through the virus itself. Based on, listen, it's incredible what they did down in the bubble, having 0 positive cases for 3+ months and doing daily testing on all of the players. It was, again, it's become sort of cliche line, but it was true. It was arguably the safest place in the United States, and maybe one of the safest places in the world to be. But if we compare right now what the NBA is hoping to undertake with this season, when we first heard about the season, is it going to be 82 games, 72 games, 66, 50? Is it going to be East versus East, West versus West? Are they going to realign divisions and kind of do a regional type thing like what baseball did? Well, what ended up happening? 72 games was the only change, really. 10 games off the regular, but it's still a full travel, playing East versus West and West versus East and traveling all over the country, nothing regionalized, and you're not in a bubble, obviously. So, and on top of that, baseball, if we use that as the most, to me, the most direct example we have, baseball had a season that was less than half of their regular season, and they had the regionalized divisions, which cut down drastically on travel. But then you also have a roster that's, for argument's sake, all but double an NBA roster. So you could withstand a positive case or two. I don't know what happens in the NBA on a 15-man roster when 13 are active, and of the 13, 10 probably play, and of those 10, there's obviously 5 that play a ton and 7 to 8 that play the bulk. What happens if, knock on wood here, the Toronto Raptors had a positive case involving, let's not even name names because I don't want to be a complete jinx. What if they lose 2 starters? 1 starter? What if they lose 1 starter and 3 guys off the bench? What's the number for the league to say that game is postponed? Like we're speaking today in the National Football League, the Ravens and Steelers were supposed to play the night game here on Thanksgiving Day, and it's been bumped till Sunday. All right, I still don't understand how it's going to be that much better in 3 days, but in the next 3 days, the Toronto Raptors might have 2 more games. Maybe they played tonight on Thursday and they've got a back-to-back Saturday, Sunday. So when's that game getting pushed to? And that's just worrying about the game, let alone, oh yeah, by the way, when are those guys healthy? When do we factor in their safety and their health and proper recuperation? So when I look at that, I just don't know what the league is going to do. Even with daily testing, are you going to be able to get this thing off? My fingers are crossed that they can. I have all the faith in the people in the front offices, especially considering what they were able to pull off in the bubble. But this is a major, major, major undertaking right now that the league is trying to do, and trying to pull this off, and hopefully set the blueprint for what pro sports can do safely and properly. But there's no denying that there are a lot of questions still, and not a lot of answers. Because again, I'm repeating myself. I think this is much different than a baseball team with a much larger roster, with far fewer games, and with less travel. And I think it's certainly a lot different than the National Football League with a roster that's basically 4 times the size, with, yes, travel all over the country, but only traveling for 1 game a week, maybe 2 in 10 days if you're playing a Thursday nighter. But 1 game a week, and the ability, again, to, I think, withstand injuries, virus or otherwise, because of the size of your roster, plus the practice squad and everything else. It's a lot different in the NBA, and even if we throw hockey in the mix, whenever they decide to do what they're doing, and even if the rumblings of the All Canadian division end up being true, all right, well, there's still 24 other teams stateside that are going to be traveling all over the place, or are they going to regionalize those? And how many games is the National Hockey League going to play? And oh yeah, by the way, their rosters are a lot bigger too, so they can maybe withstand. So the NBA is in, to me, a very unique position where there's a lot of things that kind of aren't in their favor, thus far more things to me that they're going to have to overcome to really pull this off. And they've set a great precedent with what they did in the bubble, and they've certainly earned that leash from all of us. But it's far from easy, and I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, because this is, much like the bubble, to me, this is going to be history that we're watching unfold in front of us, and it's going to be something we're talking about just as people, let alone as sports fans, for generations to come.
Always a disclaimer. What we're talking about now could be completely different tomorrow in a COVID world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so absolutely.
I'm joined now by Eric Smith here on the Unnamed Sports Show. Eric, we're already running just past 20 minutes. So I got a couple more for you here. I just wanted to ask about the newest Raptors, Aron Baynes and Alex Len. Aron Baynes just seems like a character. What did you make of him?
Unfortunately, his availability on Wednesday was during my radio show, so I didn't have a chance to listen in on him. But I mean, I've talked to him a couple of times over the years, just in scrums, and whether it be with the Celtics, the Suns, or otherwise, when he came to town. He's a very personable guy. I think definitely, as you say, a character, a personality, and it's unfortunate that he won't be able to get a true taste of the Raptor fan base. Because being down in Tampa, and even if they were in Toronto with limited, if any, fans able to come into the building at Scotiabank Arena. So I want to say that he'll be a fan favorite, and he'll be a guy that will gravitate to the fans, and the fans to him as well. But it's just going to be a weird year not having that ability, other than maybe through social media, to really interact with or see the fans. But putting personality aside, I think that it's a heck of a get for the Raptors. There's no denying that I think most of the Raptor fan base, and probably a lot of people within the organization, would have loved to have had Serge Ibaka back. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Baynes, respectfully, is on the same level as Serge, because listen, at the end of the day, even if we said every box, every check in the box is even, when you get down to that one, championship. Serge has got that right now. Championship experience, championship pedigree. I think as an athletic shot blocker, a guy that's got that kind of swagger and that edge on the floor, there were a lot of things that Serge did. But don't discount Aron Baynes' ability to get up and get a little bit dirty defensively, to be a guy that's going to make things difficult around the rim, to rebound the ball, and then on the offensive end, to set hard screens, to be a reliable guy down in the block and spotting up from 10, 15 feet. But also, we've seen that the last year or two, developing into a pretty decent shooter, coming off a season where he shot 35% from three. So this to me was, if plan A was, plan A was kind of 1A and 1B in that plan A. Re-sign Fred VanVleet, and hopefully re-sign one of Ibaka or Gasol, with Ibaka likely being the front runner of those two. You didn't get either. Well, a pretty good backup plan is getting Aron Baynes. I would argue, if he wasn't in the top 3, certainly top 5 big men available. So you got your number one target in Fred. You got a pretty damn good target still in Aron Baynes that I think is going to slide in perfectly to this team. And the other thing I would say, Josh, too, and I don't mean this as a criticism to Serge by any means, I don't know that you have to worry about feeding Baynes as much as maybe Serge. And again, I'm not saying that negatively. I think Serge proved that he was an offensive weapon, so you would work him into the offense more. I think when you've got Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby, who I think you're going to expect a lot more from offensively this year, let alone a Norm Powell, and the list goes on, you have enough offensive weapons that I don't think you necessarily need to worry about Aron Baynes and running stuff for him and is Baynes happy, etc. No. You're there to set screens, you're there to rebound, you're there to help stretch the floor a little bit, and you're going to find your offense. And I think that role in itself might be a better fit for what the Raptors are right now, because you don't have a guy who's maybe got sticky fingers and wants the ball that much more all the time. So I think it was a solid pickup for the Raptors. And then Alex Len, we all sat back and watched Baynes and Chris Boucher sign and think, hey, great to have Boucher back as well. Athletic guy who's put 15 pounds on over the course of the summer, if not more, by the time training camp opens up. So that's certainly a good sign. But at the same time, they need somebody else. They need another body. It'd be nice to have another body in there. Oh, well, pops in a former first-round pick, a former top 10 pick, and a guy that, we're not talking all-star status here, but a big body that can clog the lane, that has pretty good hands, and that adds some depth to this team in that front court position, and a guy that's been around the league and has that experience. We're not talking about some raw rookie or second, third-year guy coming in, a guy that's been around and has put up some decent numbers, even if they were kind of maybe not on the best of teams, a guy that's put up some decent numbers. So I like that pickup as well, and I don't know if I can sit here and say the Raptors are better than they were last year, but I'm not convinced that they're drastically worse. And other than the Milwaukee Bucks, and everybody wants to say Brooklyn, Josh, because they're assuming that Kyrie's going to be completely healthy and Durant's going to be completely healthy and all the chemistry is going to be there and it's all going to fit together and everything's going to be great and first-year coach and Steve Nash and everything's going to be awesome. And the Nets are going to be one of the best teams in the league, let alone in the East. Let's just wait and see. I think right now I'm still saying Milwaukee. They've been number one in the East the last 2 years. I think they did get better personnel-wise in this offseason with the moves they made. Drew Holiday alone, I think, was a hell of an acquisition for them. But after that, I'm still throwing Boston and Miami and Philly and Brooklyn and Toronto and maybe Indiana. I'm throwing them into a hat, man. And who finishes second, who finishes sixth? I'm not sure that there's a large separation between a lot of those teams I just mentioned.
No, I mean, I'd even almost thrown Charlotte there with what they did in the offseason as well.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced on that one. I'm not saying you're wrong. You can hit me up later and tell me that I was right, you were wrong, Eric. But I'm not saying I don't like what they did, but I'm not prepared to put them in the list of teams that I just did. And I think Gordon Hayward's a heck of a player, but $120 million, man. I don't know. I don't know.
He got his money. Geez. So Eric, I know you're a busy guy, and I know you got your show and you got your stuff to do and prep for today. So I will let you go. Thank you for joining me here today. What are you working on? Because I know you guys are always got stuff coming out. And
I know Glenn Grunwald's coming on the show this afternoon, the president of Canada Basketball. So he's going to talk to us about the men's program and news that came out yesterday that some of the events that the team will not be taking part in due to COVID. But then obviously that sets up. I'm sure part of the conversation we're going to have as it relates to the Olympics next year. And I don't know that Glenn will have a definitive answer because who the heck knows, as you said earlier, things change hourly, let alone daily, as it relates to the virus. How many times have I said as it relates?
I'll look back and count. Probably less than I've said so.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was not a catchphrase, a crutch phrase for me. I didn't realize that. Anyway, we're going to talk to Grunwald, and we were supposed to have Chris Boucher on the show yesterday, and he ended up working out longer than anticipated and was on the floor, so he stiffed us yesterday. So if we don't track him down today, we're hoping to get him and possibly Jalen Harris on the show tomorrow. So it's been fun doing the show. It's something that started during COVID, getting back into radio hosting and having a show and having that platform every day, and I enjoy it. And heck, I hope it keeps going during the season, but I'm absolutely looking forward to calling the games again, and whether it's TV, radio, just kind of getting back to, albeit remotely, doing it off television, getting back to some sort of normalcy and having the season back again, and hopefully providing the fans, the viewers, the listeners with some sort of distraction during these unprecedented times.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed your guys' tribute to Maradona yesterday. So for anybody who hasn't checked out the Smith and Jones show on Sportsnet 590 at 1 p.m. Pacific time?
Eastern, actually.
1 p.m.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern,
1
and
p.m.
it's only an
Eastern.
hour,
Okay.
1 to 2, and I'm sure you can catch the podcast anytime if it's too early for folks out on the West Coast.
Wherever you get your great podcast. So Eric Smith, thank you very much for joining me here on the Unnamed Sports Show.
All right, thanks for having me.